Aeon's Mentors presents Self-Imposed Hardship Sharpens Judgment. Chapter 1, Pressure Reveals the Weak Signal. A decision arrives. The timeline is compressed. The data is incomplete. The room is watching. No one says it, but they are measuring you. Every pause, every word, every signal. Most people accelerate here. They speak faster. They justify prematurely. They attempt to project certainty. But speed is not control. It is exposure, because pressure does not create weakness. It reveals it quietly and immediately. What fails first is not logic. It is signal integrity. The internal system begins to fragment. Emotion enters the decision chain. Ego competes for influence. External perception distorts judgment. Noise increases. Clarity decreases. And the operator loses separation. This is where mistakes begin. Not at execution, at interpretation. The wrong variable is prioritized. The wrong risk is weighted. The wrong action is taken, all while appearing decisive. This is the danger. Untrained pressure response looks like confidence, but it is instability, because the system has never been tested, it has never been stressed, and it has never been forced to filter under load. So when pressure arrives, everything moves at once. Nothing is controlled, the signal collapses, and judgment follows. Chapter 2, Marcus Aurelius and the Discipline of Voluntary Hardship. There was no stable environment, only sustained pressure. Frontier wars, political tension, disease spreading through the population. The system was never at rest, and neither was he. Marcus Aurelius governed inside this instability, not observing it, operating within it. Every decision carried consequence, military failure, economic strain, loss of control. There was no margin for emotional drift, no space for reaction, so he trained differently. He did not pursue comfort, he reduced it deliberately. He simplified his environment, less reliance, less dependency, less attachment to ease. This was not philosophy as theory, it was governance strategy, because comfort weakens signal discipline, and signal discipline determines judgment. He understood something most ignore. If you only experience clarity in stable conditions, you do not have clarity, you have dependency. So he removed the dependency, cold exposure, minimal sleep, limited indulgence, not extreme, controlled, measured, repeatable. Each constraint had purpose: to observe the mind under strain, to identify where it fractures, and to correct it before it matters, because in real pressure there is no time to adjust, only time to act. This is the distinction. Most people meet hardship unprepared, and he met it already conditioned, already calibrated, already stable. That is why his writing is restrained. Not emotional, not reactive, but controlled, because it was built under pressure, not after it. Chapter 3, The Strategic Principle, Self-Imposed Hardship. The principle is simple. Do not wait for adversity. Introduce it in controlled form before it is forced upon you. Most systems fail because they are only tested once, when failure is already expensive. Self-imposed hardship changes this. It moves failure forward into a controlled environment where correction is possible. Hardship is not the objective. Calibration is. You are not trying to suffer. You are trying to remove distortion, because comfort introduces bias. It softens perception. It delays recognition of risk. It rewards convenience over accuracy. Under comfort, everything feels manageable, even when it is not. Hardship removes that illusion. It strips away excess, reduces dependency, forces prioritization. What remains is signal, clear, unfiltered, actionable. This is where judgment improves, not in theory, under constraint, because constraint forces selection. You cannot do everything. You cannot respond to everything. So you learn to choose. Precisely and repeatedly. This is the mechanism. Introduce controlled strain, observe system response, identify weakness, correct it early, repeat. Over time, the system stabilizes. Not because pressure disappears, because response improves. That is the shift. From reactive to deliberate, from emotional to controlled, from scattered to precise. This is what hardship builds, not endurance, judgment. Chapter 4, Why it works under stress. The mind operates as a processing system. Inputs arrive continuously. Threat signals, opportunity signals, social pressure, uncertainty. Each input competes for action. Without conditioning, everything feels urgent. Everything demands response. This is where breakdown begins, because urgency is not priority, and reaction is not judgment. Self-imposed hardship changes the system. It introduces load, controlled or repeatable. Under load, weak pathways fail. Emotional impulses surface faster. Distractions become obvious. Tolerance is tested. This exposure is critical, because what appears under controlled stress will appear under real pressure. but now it is visible. And visibility allows correction. Hardship builds filtration, not suppression. Filtration. You begin to separate signal from noise, important from irrelevant, actionable from emotional. This creates delay, not hesitation, deliberate delay, a pause inserted before response. That pause is leverage, because within it, the system reorganizes. Inputs are ranked, noise is discarded, only what matters moves forward. And this is why trained operators appear calm. They are not free from pressure. They are structured within it. Their system has already experienced load, already processed instability, already corrected failure points. So when real pressure arrives, nothing is new, only familiar patterns. And familiar patterns do not overwhelm. They are managed. That is why it works. Chapter 5. Evidence from Stoic Doctrine. Marcus Aurelius did not write for reflection. He wrote for control. His notes were not philosophy, they were corrections, applied in real time, under pressure. He writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This is not encouragement, it is jurisdiction, a boundary definition. What is controllable, what is not? Everything outside the boundary is removed from decision weight, not ignored, deprioritized. This is filtration. Second principle emerges through repetition. Do not depend on external conditions for stability, because conditions fluctuate constantly, and if stability depends on them, stability disappears. So he shifts the anchor from external environment to internal structure. He removes reliance on comfort, on ease, on favorable conditions, because reliance creates exposure. Exposure distorts judgment. Another line appears in his writings: choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Again, not emotional language, operational control. He is defining interpretation as a controllable function. Events occur. Interpretation assigns weight. Weight drives response. Most people reverse this. They allow events to dictate interpretation. He does not. He inserts control between the two. That control is trained, not assumed, built through repetition, through constraint, through voluntary hardship, because without training, interpretation becomes automatic, and automatic interpretation is unstable. His doctrine is consistent: reduce dependency, control interpretation, stabilize internal response, everything else follows. This is not theory, it is a system. Chapter 6. Modern Failure Mode, Comfort Condition Leaders. The modern environment removes friction, temperature controlled, information abundant, timelines extended, discomfort is minimized. This creates a false operating baseline. Leaders become calibrated to ease. Decisions are made without consequence pressure. Responses are made without resistance. Everything feels manageable until it is not. Then pressure enters. Suddenly, markets shift, teams destabilize, time compresses, and the system is exposed. Not because the problem is new, because the environment is different. The leader is encountering conditions that they have never trained in. So response deteriorates, speed increases, clarity decreases, emotion enters the chain. Signals are misread, noise is elevated, important variables are ignored. This is not a capability failure, it is a conditioning failure, because comfort-trained systems expect stability. When instability arrives, they attempt to restore comfort instead of adapting to reality. This creates critical errors, premature decisions, overcorrections, and visible uncertainty. And once uncertainty is visible, authority weakens, because perception follows behavior. The leader who reacts becomes predictable, and predictability reduces power. This is the hidden cost of comfort. It does not fail immediately. It fails under pressure, and by then, the margin for correction is gone. Chapter 7. Hardship is a competitive advantage. Most people avoid strain. They optimize for ease, shorter paths, lower resistance, faster relief. This creates convergence. Everyone operates within the same comfort range, same tolerance and same response patterns. So under pressure, everyone breaks the same way. This is where advantage is created. The operator who trains under hardship does not share that baseline. Their tolerance is higher. Their reaction threshold is delayed. They do not move at the first signal. They evaluate, because nothing feels unfamiliar. That they have already experienced constraint, already operated under fatigue, already made decisions without ideal conditions. So pressure does not trigger panic. It triggers recognition. And this is the shift from surprise to familiarity. And familiarity stabilizes behavior. Stability changes perception. And in volatile environments, people look for anchors. Someone who does not react, someone who does not accelerate, someone who remains controlled. That person becomes the reference point, not by title, by behavior. And reference points accumulate authority because others begin to align around them. Decisions defer to them. Signals are taken from them. Influence increases. And without effort, this is not charisma. It is structural stability, built through repeated exposure to hardship. While others seek relief, you build capacity. While others avoid friction, you use it. And over time, this divergence compounds. Small differences in tolerance become large differences in outcome. This is the advantage, not visible immediately, but decisive under pressure. Chapter 8, Practical Stress Training Protocols. Hardship must be structured, not random, not excessive, deliberate, measured, repeatable. The objective is calibration, not exhaustion. Start with physical constraint. Remove environmental comfort, cold exposure, fasted training, extended effort under fatigue. These are not fitness tools. They are signal training. You observe response under load. Breathing changes, focus narrows, impulse rises. This is data. Then introduce cognitive constraint. And delay response, do not answer immediately. Let pressure build. Hold position. This creates separation between stimulus and action. Practice silence under provocation. Someone pushes, you do not react, you observe, you filter, you decide. This is control. Then restrict information. Operate with incomplete data. Force prioritization. What matters most becomes visible. What does not falls away. Next, simulate operational pressure. Time-compressed decisions, limited resources, no ideal conditions. Run scenarios where outcomes matter, but failure is contained. This is critical. You are not avoiding error, you are relocating it into a controlled environment where correction is possible. Each protocol follows the same structure. Introduce strain, observe system response, identify instability, correct it. Repeat, over time response stabilizes, not because pressure decreases, because tolerance increases, clarity improves, and decision-making holds. This is the purpose. Train under controlled hardship, so uncontrolled hardship does not break you. Chapter 9, Identity Shift from Comfort Seeker to Operator. Most people organize their lives around reduction. Less friction, less resistance, less discomfort. They optimize for ease. And over time, ease becomes expectation. Expectation becomes dependency. Dependency becomes fragility because the system only functions when conditions are favorable. Remove the condition and performance drops. This is where identity must change, not at the level of action. At the level of orientation, you do not seek comfort, you evaluate it, you decide when it is useful, and when it is weakening you. This is control. You begin to use friction deliberately, not avoid it, because friction reveals structure. It exposes weakness. It forces clarity. This changes how you interpret difficulty. It is no longer interference. It is feedback, something to be studied, not escaped. This creates a different internal posture, less reactive, less dependent, more stable. You do not need ideal conditions. You operate within whatever exists because your system has been trained to function without support. And this is the shift from environment-driven to internally governed, from comfort conditioned to pressure calibrated, from reactive behavior to deliberate action. This is what defines an operator, not motivation, not intensity, structure. And that structure is built through repeated exposure to hardship. Chapter 10, The Decision-Making Advantage. Hardship produces outcomes, not theoretical, operational. First, signal clarity. Irrelevant inputs lose weight. Noise is reduced. What remains is essential. You see faster, not because you rush, because there is less to process. Second, emotional containment. Impulse does not lead. It is observed, then filtered, and then either used or discarded. This creates separation between feeling and action. That separation is control. Third, execution stability. Decisions hold under pressure. They are not revised prematurely, not abandoned under stress, not distorted by external reaction. They persist because they were formed under similar conditions. Together, these form judgment, not intelligence, not knowledge. Applied clarity under constraint. This is what most lack because it cannot be learned passively. It must be built through exposure, through repetition, through correction. And once built, it compounds. Each decision improves the next. Each exposure refines the system. Over time, variance decreases, outcomes stabilize. Others rely on analysis. You rely on structure. Others seek certainty. You operate without it. This is the advantage. Not visible in calm environments, but decisive when pressure compresses time. When others hesitate, you move, not faster, more precisely. That is judgment. Chapter 11, Closing Compression, the Operational Rule. Pressure will arrive without warning, without preparation time. It will not adjust to you. You must already be adjusted to it. This is the distinction between those who react and those who execute. Do not rely on favorable conditions. They are temporary and do not depend on comfort. It weakens filtration. Instead, introduce controlled hardship regularly, deliberately. Expose the system to strain before it is required to perform. Observe where it breaks, not externally, internally, where emotion overrides logic, where urgency overrides clarity, where noise overrides signal. Correct those points early. Repeat the process until response stabilizes, until pressure feels familiar, until nothing internal accelerates, when everything external does. This is the objective. Not resilience, precision under load. So the rule is simple. Train under hardship before hardship trains you. Remove dependency on comfort, stabilize the internal system, then act only when the signal is clear. That is judgment.